I'd like to thank the witnesses, and I'm sorry I missed your introduction. I was actually on the road up, so I'm delighted to be here. What differences can we make to help construction in these sectors? And we've talked about the cost of building houses. So we'll just use one simple one. I've just put it down here. A 2,000 square foot house in 2020 was costing 240,000 plus VAT, which came to 272,040 euros. And the government had 32,400 euros in VAT on that, outside of income tax or any other tax that they had on it. You then go to today to build the same house, 2,000 square feet, so it's like having the same phone today as 2020. It's now costing 480,600 euros. And the government have 48,000 euros VAT on 30.5%, which gives the government an increase of 16,200 euros in VAT on the labour alone on housing. We then factor in the transport cost into it, which was always only 1.5 to 2% in the construction cost of building houses, is now between 6 and 7% on construction of houses. And our government take 57 euros on every 100 euros that is on tax. That's 57 euros on 6 or 7% of the cost on 400,000 unit house. Our government is taking 57 euros. And we're talking about the increase in cost. Now we've got to get our materials from the ports to the construction sites. Now we've got to get our tradespeople from their homes to the site. They can't travel in a bus. They've got their tools. These are tradespeople. So now we've got to get them. And we're talking here, and I'm sorry, we've been talking round the shop here about construction costs, when it's our own government are the ones that are taking the most money out of this. In taxes, in carbon taxes, in VAT, in income tax. And let's be real here. If we factored all that into it, how much a square foot would a house come down? In reality. And I'm sorry, there's people here in this room all voted for the carbon tax at a time that we could have done something else. We could have delayed it for a time, which would have helped our housing industry to build houses. And what do we come up with? Let's give developers 144,000 per apartment to build apartments, when we have people that want to spend their own money building on their own land can't build because of government decisions. This is why I call certain things hypocritical. And we can have all the meetings we like here around the table. And I'm in construction, and I'm still in construction all my life. I understand it on a daily basis, and you've said it yourselves. Every week, I'm getting a letter from the suppliers. The costs are rising. Yes, they are. The planning process, you're 100% right. If there's an objection, it's done on all sides. That slows everything down. But let's look at this here, lads. You want to build a one-off house to take people off of the housing waiting list in a rural area. They're being charged 6,000 and 7,000 to be allowed to open the ditch in their site. On top of all the excessive taxes that they have to pay, on top of all the material that has been front-driven by carbon. It's been front-driven by carbon and taxes at a time of need. We are rising taxes. Our government is catch rich and everyone else is made pay. I've asked for 8 years, 6 years of council and 2 years of a TD to introduce the apprenticeship model for early school leavers in school. I'm 8 years at it, and you're talking about it now as well. I saw it 8 years ago. Why? Because I'm in construction, I'm on the ground, I can see it. I have full empathy with everything that you're trying to do. But unless we get a target on all the taxes and carbon taxes that we're paying on building houses at the moment, the only people that are going to end up paying for this are the people that can afford it. And the only people that are going to be on the housing list is an awful lot more people that can't afford it because of the rising cost of everyday living. That's where we have a problem. And I'm sorry, we can talk about this all day long and we can come back to it. It's coming back to our own government are standing in the way of people building houses in this country. If we want to help, we should be looking at this sector, which can help every one of your sectors across the board to build houses. Get them to work, get them there affordable. But I don't see when it comes into a Dáil chamber and people aren't voting, they don't look at this. Because why? Are you in business? I could afford to take on 10 more people tomorrow morning to do work, but I'm not doing it. I haven't priced the house in 2 years because it's not viable. And if it's not viable for me, it's not viable for me to pay the people that are depending on me, and their families depending on me, and I'm depending on them for my livelihood. That's what it comes down to. And the other part is, if you look at zoning and zoning of lands, look in County Limerick. They're only looking at zoning the lands properly within 15 minutes of Limerick City. That takes out over 2/3 of my county. No infrastructure, so people can't build houses in the towns and villages because sewers are at capacity. And inadequate water supply. And our biggest polluter in County Limerick is the local authority. And we go out and we service notice on people day in, day out, fining them because of infrastructure. We need to start here. Yes, we all have our own climate agendas. We all want a better world. But we also want responsibility for putting roofs over people's houses affordably and putting something short-term that can help us. We're 0.1% of 1% the emissions problem globally. And what are we doing? We're the highest taxation in Europe for our people, and our government are the richest in Europe with the amount of taxes they're taking in. And who suffers most is the people that don't have adequate transport. They would use it if it was there. So the failure here is infrastructure around our whole country. And the only answer to this is government. But their only way out of it is increased taxes. They've never been richer in this country, ever in the existence of this country, than they are today. So please, let's all come together and put roofs over our house. But the government is where we need to start. Thank you very much.
There's about a minute left on that slot if there's a question in there that somebody wishes to address.
You will blame the government for all the problems.
Yeah.
Lose your opportunity.
Or carbon tax.
Just respond. I completely get where you're coming from. I think just when you open the discussion about, there's a 22-year window between 2000 to where we are now. Every economy has an inflationary increase. And I think when you compare Ireland to other European countries, we're no different in terms of the escalation of price. The issue why we're here today is to try to find a solution for the affordability bracket and break the deadlock between viability and lack of viability. For just residential construction, both across
county, rural, and
across Ireland. Yeah, I think I can't go to the VAT or the government's position on VAT, but I do think that there is. What we deal with is risk. And when you procure projects on behalf of the public sector, you're into understanding what the supply chain will and will not accept. And our job is to try to mitigate that risk, because risk comes at a premium. We can isolate costs and materials. We can understand the supply chain right across the globe and be able to isolate what we're buying those materials for. The sectorial employment order, again, sets the bracket for pricing of labour. What we need to be thinking about is the CSO and how we index those materials and rely on that information to be able to advise government and mitigate the risk to get the contractors to come back to the table and tender for public sector projects.
Thanks, Mr. James.
Thank you.
I'll move on now.